Once Goku and Chi-Chi arrive at Kame House, they would quickly go and fill Master Roshi in on their predicament. They would tell him how they couldn't find the last Dragon Ball, and they didn't have an immediate way to find Bulma without scouring the world for her. He would eventually suggest for them to go see Fortuneteller Baba because she can use her divination to help find lost items. When they get there, they still have to get into line, and as usual, the group that was in front of them still comes out beaten up. Regardless, once they are brought in to meet Fortuneteller Baba, they explain why they are there to see her. She would say she can find this item for them for 10 million zenny, but they obviously can't afford that much, so she would explain to them the alternative option, which is to fight 5 of her champions. In the original, Fortuneteller Baba was willing to let just 3 people take on her 5 fighters. If Chi-Chi and Goku were really confident enough to take on 5 fighters by themselves, Baba would let the 2 of them do so. Before I get into the fights, I really want to mention that these fights would be a breeze for them. From the estimated power levels I've seen for Fangs, See-Through, Bandages, and Spike, all of them are weaker than what Chi-Chi and Goku are at this time. Anyway, out of the 2 of them, Chi-Chi would likely be the one to fight first, which, her first fight would be against Fangs the Vampire. Krillin normally lost this fight against him because of him being fast enough to catch Krillin and suck his blood. Since he is fighting Chi-Chi this time, he wouldn't be able to dodge her attacks, even if he transformed into a bat, so it wouldn't take long for her to knock him into the lake. For the next fight, which is against See-Through the Invisible Man, that might be the only one out of the first 4 fights that is difficult for them. Him being invisible is still a big advantage for them. For the scene in his fight against Yamcha, Yamcha was stronger than him, but he just couldn't see him to hit him. Bulma also isn't there in this timeline, and neither is Roshi, so the scene of him being covered in blood from Roshi wouldn't happen, though I think this fight could be a good opportunity to show off her improved control over her emotions. This was something Roshi suggested for her to get a handle on since she got frustrated in their first fight back in the 20th World Martial Arts Tournament. Something like getting beaten up by an invisible fighter would be highly frustrating, but she would have enough emotional control by this point to not get overwhelmed by these feelings. Regardless, like how Yamcha managed to hit him from hearing him move, Chi-Chi would likely be able to do the same thing. Fortuneteller Baba likely wouldn't get the chance to sing to hide the sound of his movements, though. Chi-Chi's hit would likely be strong enough and fast enough to knock See-Through into the lake, but she is way stronger than what Yamcha was at this time, without Roshi being there. When they move inside for the next match, he can't give them the warning he usually did about the Devil's Toilet Arena. Baba would still tell them about the pool of acid at the bottom and show them what happens if they fall in by tossing a piece of meat into it. Regardless, Chi-Chi's fight against Bandages the Mummy would essentially go like how Goku's fight against him went. She is stronger than Goku normally was at this point, and he defeated Bandages in one hit, so she would easily be able to do the same thing. Chi-Chi's next fight would be against Spike the Devil Man, and she'd have an easy time here as well. Just like how Goku was dodging his attacks and easily hitting him, Chi-Chi would be able to do that too. Even the Devil Might Beam wouldn't work against her, either. We know she is pure of heart after all, so she was able to ride the Flying Nimbus, so his attack would do nothing to her. Then when he still tries to use his pitchfork as a last resort, she easily dodges these attacks and kicks him into the wall. Now, this would normally have brought her into a fight against Grandpa Gohan, as he was Fortuneteller Baba's last fighter in our timeline. He is still alive in this timeline, however, so I highly doubt he is here this time. While Baba didn't know that Goku is Gohan's grandson, he did say that he asked her to let him know if a boy with a tail ever came by, as Baba can see the future to some extent. She likely knew when Goku was going to show up there, and that's when she would have recruited Gohan. Since he is alive in this timeline, he obviously can't do that, so this left me with 4 options for her last fighter. First option was that it would be no one, and Spike the Devil Man would be her last fighter. While I could have seen this happening, it seemed like the least interesting option to go with, so I decided against it. The next option I could think of was for her to bring back Master Mutaito, but she likely knew about him because of her brother being his former student. This option seemed interesting to me, but I decided against it for 2 reasons. Usually when I saw power scaling about Master Mutaito, it put him as being weaker than what Master Roshi was at the start of Dragon Ball. The estimates for his power also had him at being weaker than what Chi-Chi and Goku currently are, so I decided against using him. As for the other reason I decided against using him, I made this choice because I don't think Master Mutaito would have as strong of an emotional impact on Goku as it being Grandpa Gohan did. Sure, it could be cool to see Goku face off against his master's old master, but he wouldn't even know who he was without being told who he is by himself or Fortuneteller Baba. So, since I wanted someone that would have an emotional impact on Goku, this brought me to the last two options that I could think of. These last two options I could think of were either Guinea or Bardock, since Goku remembers them in this timeline. It was hard for me to decide between these two on which should fight Goku. The main issue with choosing these two is that they would far surpass Goku in power, even with Guinea not being a fighter. She's likely still strong, as she used to be part of Bardock's squad. I do think I have an idea on how to limit their power, but I'll get into that shortly. The main thing that helped me make the choice between the two of them is what we learned about Bardock in the Granola Saga. When Minato asked him about a wish he would want, he mentioned that he would like to see his sons thrive. What better way for that wish to be at least partially granted than by getting to see his youngest son again, one last time. So, I decided for Baba's final fighter to be Bardock, but this brings up the question of how she would have found him or knew about him. Like I mentioned earlier, she likely knew Goku was coming there ahead of time since she has some knowledge of the future. Assuming she looked into his past and learned about how strong of a fighter he is and that he is an alien, that might have given her some ideas. With her not having a fifth fighter, she could have decided to use someone from Goku's past, at least on the day he is set to show up. Then when she goes to Otherworld and talks to King Yemma, he would likely be reluctant to at first, but I'm going to say that he only agrees because she'd remind him of a favor that he owes her. If he wanted to be something silly, since Dragon Ball uses gag moments often, he could owe her a favor just for her having brought him a food or something he liked from the earth. Regardless, that part doesn't matter. The main point is that she would get to go to hell and look for Bardock. He'd likely be skeptical during this meeting, but at the mention of getting to see one of his sons again, I think he'd agree. Now, to address his power level, since assuming he still has a power level of 10,000 like he was said to have in the original Dragon Ball Z special, he would far outclass anyone on Earth. For the sake of this fight, I think Baba would use her magic to limit his power to about 1/40th of his full power. This would give him a power level of around 250, but he could choose to suppress himself if he wanted to. Back to the present, though, Bardock would get into the ring to take on Chi-Chi. While he doesn't seem like the type to purposely hide his identity like Grandpa Gohan was, I think it would be used as a joke moment to see someone as stern as him wearing the same type of mask as what Grandpa Gohan had on. Even after seeing her effortlessly take out the other fighters, he's likely still dismissive that an Earthling can match his power. He's right to some extent, though, as even at his restricted power level, he is stronger than her. The gap isn't too wide that she can't land any hits on him, though. So, when she does manage to land some good hits on this unknown fighter, he would be forced to take her seriously. There would likely be some mocking in the fight coming from Bardock, but with her temper under control in this timeline, it doesn't get to her. So after he decides to get serious, he might give her a brief compliment by saying something about her having a fighting spirit. Regardless, the fight still wouldn't go in her favor even if she does land good hits on him. The suppressed Bardock is still stronger than her, so he would knock her into the lake. Once she got out of the lake, he'd still stand proud, as she'd just swear to get even stronger. After all, she wasn't going to just let herself get tossed around like a weakling. She would continue to better herself going forward, just like Master Roshi taught her. Goku would enter the ring next, as he then prepares to fight this masked fighter. With Goku not yet knowing this is his father in disguise, he would be taking this fight seriously. Finding out where the last Dragon Ball is depends on him being able to win this fight. To make this a better fight, Bardock would likely have to press himself even more to be closer to Goku's power level, but he still has a slight advantage. Throughout their fight, he likely calls Goku Kakarot, but Goku wouldn't know what he's talking about since he doesn't remember his birth name. Bardock would likely taunt him as well, mentioning things about how he wouldn't be strong enough to survive off of this planet. Things like this would just fire Goku up more to prove his strength, so he'd resort to trying techniques like the Kamehameha. He likely even uses his power pole during their fighting at times, thus demonstrating his skills with them. In between mocking him, while Bardock wouldn't be saying these things out loud, he would notice things from Guinea and Goku. Could even be something simple as his kind-looking eyes or his smile, but he'd quickly shake these thoughts away so that he could focus on the fight. He powers himself up to his full power, albeit restricted, as he then charges at Goku again. The young boy might get some hits in, but the fight wouldn't go in his favor at this point. Bardock would be going all out to test his power and to try and toughen him up in the Saiyan way, so he wouldn't hold back. By the end of their fight, Goku might be bloodied, but he still wouldn't give up. Seeing his determination to keep fighting even when he is outmatched would remind Bardock of himself, just like Grandpa Gohan did in the original manga. Bardock calls Uncle, thus forfeiting the match. This would confuse Goku, and when he asks the masked fighter why he did this, he takes off his mask. Goku would be shocked to say the least, as he remembers what his dad looks like in this timeline. Like he did in the actual timeline with Grandpa Gohan, he'd hug Bardock while crying. After all, even if he's a strong fighter, he's still just a kid. Bardock likely wouldn't be used to seeing other Saiyans being this soft, but it'd remind him even more of Gine, so he'd let Goku cry it out. Once Goku finishes crying, he and Bardock would likely talk for a bit. While they were talking, Chi-Chi would be confused about this being Goku's dad, since she thought his parents were dead. Fortuneteller Baba would tell her that his parents are dead, as she points out the halo above Bardock's head. Back with Bardock and Goku, I could easily see their talk taking a serious turn. Bardock might tell Goku the truth about what happened with Planet Vegeta, since he saw Frieza destroy it firsthand, like how Grandpa Gohan gave him the advice to train his tail to get rid of his weakness and get stronger. Bardock might suggest for him to train and get stronger as well. His suggestion could include things like learning how to control the Great Ape form. We don't know if Bardock had control over this form, but assuming that the statement about him knowing how to make an artificial moon is true, I think he would have control over this form. In my opinion, I think most Saiyans would have had control over this form as they got older and more experienced. After all, a rampaging Great Ape, or even groups of them, would likely be more of a hindrance in the long run. Regardless, Bardock would also tell Goku that his birth name was Kakarot. Now, does that mean that Goku is going to start going by that name? Well, no, probably not, because he was still raised with the name Goku and that's what everyone knows him as. He would just now know his real name. That won't be a surprise to him later in the timeline. It's possible if Bardock tells him about his brother as well, and assuming he learned from Baba what Raditz is doing, he would tell Goku about how he serves Frieza now. Before Bardock goes to leave, he would tell Goku to make them proud and to remember what Frieza did to his race. Also, before he leaves, since Chi-Chi learned that he's Goku's father, he might run up to him. She would have wanted to talk to him secretly since she still has plans to marry Goku in this timeline, since he made that promise to her. Mainly, she'd probably be trying to indirectly ask Bardock if he's okay with her marrying him and if she'd have his blessing to do so. This might catch Bardock off guard, but since she impressed him during their fight, he'd likely have no problem with this. He might mention about how he noticed that she is strong-willed, and how that will be useful for keeping a Saiyan like his son in line. He then go to Baba and get the restriction on his power level released by her, with a silent nod as a goodbye to his son and Chi-Chi. Bardock is then transported back to Hell. Goku would likely try to ask Chi-Chi what she was talking to his dad about. They'd be interrupted by an impatient Baba, as she was preparing to show them where the last Dragon Ball is with her crystal ball. Much to Chi-Chi's relief, this would make Goku forget about his question, as he then has Baba show them where it is. They then use the flying Nivus to head there and get it, and when they see the Pilaf gang inside of the car, they wouldn't recognize them at first. After all, they never fought them in this timeline. They likely heard about them from Bulma. Based on Bulma's description of them, they'd eventually recognize them. The Pilaf gang would be easily defeated by the two of them, but they likely don't even get to try and flee in their robot suits like they normally did. When they both use a Kamehameha against their robot suits, it would likely damage the suits enough so that they couldn't run. After forcing Emperor Pilaf to hand over the last Dragon Ball, they returned to Fortuneteller Baba's palace. They then summoned Shenron and wished for everyone good who was killed by the Red Ribbon Army to be revived. Once that wish is made, they then turn their attention towards their next journey, whatever that may be. They still have 3 years until the next World Martial Arts tournament, after all.